Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Michelle Holling-Brooks here from Unbridled Change, and you're listening to Soulful Practices podcast. More beings are awakening to the call of their hearts and soul to live a life that is in alignment with their true self, launching themselves on a spiritual wellness journey for evolving their systems from being subconsciously survival-led to being consciously soul-led with all aspects of their life, with like true holistic health and wellness and being. That's the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. And yes, we want to be in alignment too within our careers, our financial life, social life, and family life, and in recreation too. While the spiritual journey of becoming aligned with our true self throughout all facets of our life is absolutely amazing, it can also feel overwhelming, lonely, isolated, and leaving us not really know where to go next on our path of awakening. This podcast is dedicated to helping you along that journey. I've been on my spiritual and wellness journey for over 25 years now and been doing this full-time as a soul companion, guide, and coach with my clients since I started Unbridled Change in 2008. And one of the main questions I'm always consistently asked is, hey, Michelle, what type of spiritual or healing and wellness practices will best support me on my journey of aligning to my true self? This podcast is the answer to that. Each week, I will share with you a new episode that brings you into the behind the scenes of my own personal soulful healing practices, and I invite you to join me in them. Each week, I'm going to be sharing with you a new soulful practice that is based off of what I like to call different pocket teachers. These are short mindful quotes, a spiritual key concept or healing concept, or a short text from a spiritual and growth teacher and wisdom teaching. And they are designed to help serve as a guide for us, a companion to us throughout that week, to help you courageously connect with the soul-led choices that will best help serve you in making the choices that will bring you into more balance so that you can live, love, and lead your authentic life. Truly going from having that desire, the intention to have a soul-led life, to embodying and unbridling your beautiful soul-led life. Again, I'm your host, Michelle Holling-Brooks, and I'm so glad you found us. Let's dive into the soulful practices for this week. Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Soulful Practices. And this week, I have picked a new quote to help guide us and craft our soulful practice around for this week. And it is from a Greek Hellenistic philosopher, hopefully named Epictetus. So Epictetus is known for a few things, and one of it is really allowing ourselves to challenge this idea that our thoughts and our philosophies, do we bring those into how do we live? Do we bring them into how do we make choices? How do we stand? And do we act with volition or not? And so we'll talk about that word volition here in a second. So the quote is, don't explain your philosophy. And then again, this is what's attributed to him, but he was back in between 30-40 AD, and he died in 134 AD. So quotes are a little bit iffy. And so don't explain your philosophy, embody it. And Epictetus's world was a little interesting of his story when you kind of research him and find out a little bit about before he set up his school of philosophy. And he was originally born into slavery. Again, like I said, around 30-40 AD. And somehow he eventually made his way into Rome. And once he was in Rome, he had earned his freedom or was granted his freedom. And at some point, though, his philosophy of bringing in self-liberation and self-realization and really inviting people to match what their philosophies are with their bodies, it got a little bit too much against the forefront of how people wanted to kind of be subservient to the rules. And so he ended up being banned and kicked out and banished from Rome, where he went into northern Greece. And so this is the kind of, when you look up his story, you'll find this. And there he started his own school of philosophy. And he's credited with much of the theory and thinking of when we start to talk about the true self. A lot of that comes to Epictetus, okay? And honoring that it is in our ability to allow ourselves to moving from other things being mastery over top of us to having self-mastery, right? To having self-responsibility and experiences and growth opportunities. And this word, again, that he was really known for was volition. And volition is how we can really unlock ourselves into saying, hey, I am honoring my true self. I'm living my convictions, my attitudes, my ideas, my intentions, my actions. I want them to all match who I truly be and not just what other people have told me what is possible, what is not possible, what can be, what can't be, how we're supposed to act towards this thing or that thing, and all the other stuff. And so he was like, challenge that and take it inside and see what really allows you to say, this is who I am and this is how I want to work. And so, of course, we have we have our possessions, we have our careers, we have our public images, and sometimes those match who we truly are, but sometimes it feels like a mask, a persona. It's another word from that time frame, that persona that we put over top of ourselves that projects out to the world of how the world sees us, but it doesn't always match who we truly are. Ideally, when we do healing work and we're on that spiritual journey, we're taking these masks off one at a time and saying, okay, this might be how the world sees me because of different attributes about me or the different types of things that I do. But underneath that mask, at the end of the day, when I take them off and I sit with myself, how do I want to be with that? You know, as I stand there with that and that ability to be in that vulnerability, does it match who I want to be, what my heart is asking me to be, and how I'm actually living, the actions, what it is? And so he challenged his students to really not just explain their philosophy, but to embody it. And in that, he was saying, hey, match. I need you to match your actions, match your choices, match the way that you're showing up in your career, in your choices with what you're doing with your possessions, in all these different things as best as you can. Like, we can't get every little thing now in today's world, right? Sometimes it's a little bit difficult, but the heart of it, the most of it, how much can you bring it in? And that's what he called your volition. Whether we were committed to allowing ourselves to express based off of our will, or we're willing to compromise that and give that away. So it seems like an easy choice. Who wouldn't want to live by their will, right? Like, that should be easy. As I'm walking down the street, I have these intentions that we're setting every week, you know, like, hey, I want to walk with honoring myself and honoring others. Hey, I want to do this and I want to do that. You know, each week we're setting an intention of something that we want to attune our field to expressing more, experiencing more of, stop doing something else. You know, we're slowly, piece by piece, week by week, reattuning our own field to have more freedom, more courage, more ability to be in our flow, right? And that's why I really love this philosophy of don't just think it, be it, embody it. And so what stops us? Because of course, I mean, hello, I want that. Don't you want that? What stops us is these survival and trauma adaptations, these program systems, these limiting beliefs, these fears that are in our cellular structure of fear of embarrassment, right? Fear of humiliation, loss of power, loss of belonging. Like, really, truly, we have survival drives that say, hey, you need to belong to a tribe in order to survive. And if you don't belong to that tribe, then you're gonna die. You know, basically, it all boils down to that. If you're shunned, if you're banished, if you're like, that's it, game over. And so it drives us to have sometimes very unhealthy compromises in here. Different things like folding and fawning, the people pleasing of, you know, kind of backing off, folding in of ourselves, of our choices exiting the building and letting somebody else's thoughts, somebody else's ideas, somebody else's way in which they view the world just kind of take place and set up resonance within us, and I don't know how many of you have ever felt that. You're like looking at you're like, why did I just do that? That's not how I believe. That's not how I think. That's not my anger. That's not my judgment. That's not my voice that I just heard coming out of my mouth. Like, who the heck is it? And sometimes we can even track it. I give one of the exercises that I give to clients is this little picture with all these little thought bubbles around it. And I ask them like, hey, what are some of the common thought bubbles that you have about how you think about yourself, right? And put those in there. And then we'll give me the positive ones, and then give me the ones that really kind of gum you up. And in each one of those, I say, okay, now there's a little square next to each of the little thought bubbles. And then I say, okay, now in that square, tell me where you think that came from. Because chances are it didn't just materialize in your own head. That thought came from somebody else, either media or a family member or a friend or a moment or, the what's it called? Ooh, the noble enemy, right? Of bringing that into place and allowing us to kind of have that grit moment where we can see parts of ourselves through a confrontation or an exchange that we're having with somebody else and have a chance to shift or change, right? So often, all these thoughts that are in our head don't even belong to us. They didn't get installed by us personally. They were put in there by something else generationally, culturally, or experience wise within our lifetime. And we've gathered up all these, quote, passengers on the bus, right? And it's those passengers on the bus that sometimes take the wheel and just careen us in an area that doesn't match who we are. And so, what this quote is, don't just talk about your philosophy or explain your philosophy, embody it. It's really asking us to explore, where do we stand on our values and how we're living? How are we matching the two? Or are we allowing our values just to kind of sit like a pretty little thing smacked on the wall, right? And we look at them and they sound good, or just like a static idea, or do we allow ourselves to breathe with them, walk with them, and help our choices? This is literally what this whole podcast is about, is each week inviting us to explore one little particular area and reattune it. Clean out the trash that's not ours, claim what is ours, and allow us to step into greater and greater wholeness. And per the saying, the more we have wholeness and self-love for ourselves, and ability to say, okay, I'm gonna have these places where I'm totally running on a tape that I had no idea about until I know it. Then I have another quote by Maya Angelou, know better, do better. We can bring that in and start to say, okay, I'm going to allow my system to run off of this truth because it's my truth, right? And then I'm going to even allow myself to go to the next level and start to work with mystical truths and mystical laws and bringing them in even beyond my own personal wants and desires. Can I work with it on a much greater scale and bring that into my life through my life and how I live and how I offer that support out to others through joyful service? That's really what I love. And so it starts to work as a compass for us versus just a static idea, right? When we take values into a verb, into something that's helping guide our choices, now we have a way to course correct as we go. And that's what embodiment is all about, right? So embodiment means to give body to incarnate, corporal form, right? And to go from, this is a nice thought, this is a nice idea, to distill it down, energetically from this idea state through the chakra systems and allow it to give birth to it, to set up form, to give it the idea of how it's going to take shape, both within me. How's it going to influence how I see, how I think, how I speak, how I hold myself, my literal posture? And then how is it going to work out in the outside world with me, right? So another way that you can work with this beautiful quote is one of the very key places that I start all clients with. So one of the hidden components of, or the hidden blocks to healing that can come in is either where we have inner trust in ourselves or we don't, right? And so building inner trust, I'm going to say what I mean and mean what I say, is one of the key foundational things. We cannot pass go. We cannot work on trusting our intuition and healing that and taking those courageous leaps of faith if we don't have an internal strength within us that says, yeah, I can trust that. I can trust when I hear that little voice coming from my heart center. I know the difference. I can discern the difference between a protective voice within my system, a wounded part within my system, and the belief system of the cultural community flashing through me. I can discern and feel which one's which. I can trust myself to pick the right choice and to move forward with it into action, right? And when I'm able to say that I mean what I say and say what I mean, that is the antidote to the fears that I talked about. Well, why don't we match our volition, right? Like, well, we don't match it because of the worry, the fear, the survival parts of us that are very real and do run our ship in the beginning, because in the beginning, that is the way that we need, right? So it's not just because we are wishy-washy or we have a weak will. I haven't met one person who falls in that category. Instead, it's just that there are old survival tapes and trauma adaptations that are very real, and they very much run in between us, taking us out kind of at the knees, so to speak, and they have more authority in our system than our own personal will, than our own heart center talking to us, right? And so step one of any healing and spiritual journey is to say, hey, there's another way to do this. There's another way to operate, and I need my system to let go of its grip on its survival level and trust me. Trust that I now have the ability to make choices, the freedom of movement of my physical body in a way that I can move towards that which is optimal for me, and I can move away from that which isn't. I can handle a stressful situation and honor my worth. And when that's not happening, I also can set up boundaries, move, shift, do what I need to do to bring that back into balance, right? So that I feel that now there is a protective agent in the system, and that agent is me, right? And so that is the step one of healing, because it's not going to want to do anything of all these beautiful ideas and wishes and dreams and all that good stuff. It's not going to want to follow any of that if it doesn't believe that there's a way for us to be protected in a healthy way versus having to compromise, like what happens in the survival and the trauma ones. So when we start to bring these things together, that's when we start to say, okay, this is when every, coach, you go to any coach and you say, hey, I want to change something. They're going to say, great. First step, let's start with something small. I want you to go home and clean out a drawer. I want you to go into your closet and just do one little section of it, sort it, keep what's helpful, donate what you're ready to donate, or like upsell it, whatever you want to do with it, and get rid of the stuff that's the ratty old thing falling apart on the hanger. Right? And it's a really simple goal that they're asking you to do before they're willing to start working on career goals, life goals, spiritual goals, health goals, whatever you went to that coach to do, right? And why is that? Why does every coach have a version of something like that? That's what I call the Karate Kid thing, wax on, wax off, right? And why do they put that in there? This is why. Because they're helping you go from I want to change something to I did change something. They're helping your system realize, holy cow, wow, that's real, right? So that when we start to get more into the non-material world, into the unseen realm, so to speak, we still believe in those qualities of ourselves, to trust them, to feel that we can put our faith in them, because we have that ability to say, yes, I can take a thought, I can go through the action steps, and I can create the form. I can embody it, right? So One of the ways that I would love to have you work with this quote this week, if this is calling to you, is to think of your personal motto. So, like a motto encompasses how we want to think or act or be with ourselves or others, right? They're like that vision statement, that way that just kind of encapsulates a little bit about us. And so one of my life's mottos is to connect with joy, right? I absolutely love it. It's what I try to do. And it reminds me of that big, T truth, that big mystical truth that there is joy and happiness and laughter and grace that is always present in some form or fashion, no matter what the weather is that I'm walking in right now. So whether I'm in the absolute grittiest moment, there is something in there that's wanting to bring me buoyancy. There is a choice in there that's going to help me feel a sense of grace, that I'm not in there alone, whether that's seen or unseen, right? There's going to be a moment where I can be laughing and weeping in there. There's going to be a moment of connection. And it's also not the whole thing. So when I'm in those really gritty weather, like really a place of my life that I could be like, I could do without this experience right now. That even in that experience, that's not all of what's happening in my life at that moment. There are more pockets, more connections, different things that are also present. And if I can allow myself to be fed, nourished, supported by those different aspects, then I have the battery pack, the bandwidth to not only meet the gritty moment of my life, but actually kind of find a way to surf with it, right? To meet it with intention and with volition, right? To say, okay, in this moment that's gritty, that I want to throw all of my mottos out the window, all of my ideas, all of my philosophies out the window. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to hold them and I'm going to bring them into that moment and try to walk with them the best that I can at that moment, right? So sometimes that's laughing and weeping. So that's one of my mottos, connecting with joy. I even started my membership community. It's called Connecting with Joy because that's like such a huge thing for me, right? And so if I remember that, and that's my motto, when I find myself saying like, ugh, there's absolutely, this is like, I've been forgotten by the heavens, so to speak. I know that I can say, whoop, time out. That's a thought. That's not mine. And what is mine, right? Mine is that there is grace here no matter what. So I am not spared anything, but yet I have grace to help me meet whatever that moment is, even if it's one that I'm like, really, universe, I'm gonna put a suggestion in the suggestion box that says I really do believe I could have gone without this current situation that might be happening for me. And the other thing is that mottos are something that we can grow into, right? Like, so this motto of connecting with joy, it started off this idea for me. I want to figure out how to do this because the exact opposite was originally true for me, right? I had huge moments where I would get lost in the past and in stories of victimhood, of feeling like I'm getting crapped on by the universe, right? Huge moments of just being angry, and that anger would go from this moment to this one to this one to this one without me pausing to be like, hey, there's no reason for that emotion to be in this pot of my life right now, right? If I was in fear, it was all across the board, right? I was stuck in unworthiness and not enoughness. I would separate myself from possible joy opportunities because I was feeling depressed and angry over here. And so somehow that just felt safer. Like, oh, I don't want to bring to them my bad mood. And the idea that like the bad mood didn't have to do that, and I would still be honoring myself, that I could honor that this part over here could be not so fun and these parts over here could be amazing. It all didn't have to match, right? I didn't have that capacity to do that at first. It was through working with the motto, saying, okay, I want to bring this into form. Where does this working? Where is this not working? That slowly over time, my field got more and more attuned with very quickly being able to play the game of, I don't feel like there's any grace here. I know there is. Where is it? Right? And let me put on those little grace goggles so that I could see it, find it, grab that lifeline and work with that, right? And
being with that. Another example of a motto of mine that I have is to be kind, right? I love that one. And so to embody that, though, I would have to really trust myself to rein myself back in moments where maybe I was having shadow judgments or really trying to run with a story that I was making up in my mind of like, oh, well, this person did this, so I don't have to, like some type of justifications to get me to back off of like, what would kindness be? And even challenging to myself, like, what does kindness look like in this situation? Is it appeasing somebody who is really making choices that's harmful to themselves and others people? Is that kind? Or is it coming in there with beautiful, compassionate, healthy boundaries? That's actually the kind thing to do. So to work with that motto, I had to take on all these belief systems. You want to talk about belief systems? Like tons of them of like what was actually kind and what would help guide me into those choices. Well, I had to start to be able to read myself from the different levels, from the personal level, right? From the survival level, and then also from the soul level of being able to bring each of those parts, see the different reads of the different levels, and to then be able to say, have the ability to click on the choice that popped up all the way to the top, not just see it but actually embody it. And one of the big, huge things that I found with both of these two mottos for myself is that I was really good at helping connect other people to joy. I was really good at being kind to other people. And the huge, glaring, missing piece in that scenario was me. I wasn't turning around and letting myself connect with joy. And I wasn't necessarily being kind to myself. So in my own self-work practices, that is like what I'm teaching you and working and engaging with you with, I was being really harsh to myself, really judgmental, really like judging myself on this perfection thing. We've already talked about that if you looked at that Gift of Imperfection episode, right? Like really holding myself to this tricky standard. So before we can dive into the practices this week, that really kind of circles me back around to when we start to say, don't just talk about your philosophies, embody it, just don't like have the idea laminated and stuck on a wall somewhere, do it. We bring in, here's another motto, the Nike motto, just do it, like that sounds great. Or like the little Yoda one, there is no try, there's only do. If we start to bring in some of these, it can start to give us this idea, this illusion. And this is a huge, tricky trap that I want to bring forward in this one that belongs to the saboteur archetypal pattern, right? And that's this idea that perfection is the name of the game. So what we want to do is pull back out that Leonard Cohen's, pocket teacher. That's why he's in our toolbox, right? Is that there is no such thing as a perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. And that's where the light comes in. So we got to now circle back around to the first part of that quote, ring the bells that can still be rung, right? So perfection, if that one is still holding on to you, is not the name of the game when it comes to this. In fact, paradoxically, it's in the moments of quote rupture. It's in the moments where we have failures, misattunements, when we have that true heart's intention to show up this way, and then we realize, whoa, I'm nowhere near it, or I'm like a little off, and you're like, ooh, what just happened there? In those moments, that is the moment where we can course correct and bring ourselves back to ourselves. And through that willingness to say, wow, I'm off course. Wow, that was not at all what I really wanted to do right there, or how I really wanted to show up, or this thought is not mine. I'm pausing right now and returning to sender this thought because it's not who I truly be. It's in those moments, those cracks, that is where the light can come in, i.e., that's where we can build self-trust. So my clients ask me, how do I build trust with myself? I've like broken my word to myself 60 million ways to Sunday. I go, well, first off, we can't change all the other 60 million ways to Sundays in the past. So one, can we have just a blanket, can we send a blanket grace of forgiveness to those moments and know that whatever was happening in those moments, we can have that compassionate idea and that grace that we're sending them to them that says, hey, that might have been the best my system could do at that moment. Do I want to stay there? No. Do I want to have a way to build more capacity within me to hold more to my philosophies, to my volition? Yes. And so, what repair work do I need to do to help myself in this moment and in future moments to make those course corrections, right? To bring that back in. And so we can get compassionately curious when we realize that we're off course, right? When we realize that our little compass is like pointing at us and we're heading in a different direction than where we want to go, that is the moment where we can pause, take a breath, pull on this soulful practice format, right? And get curious, compassionately curious about what's happening within us. What parts of us are raising their hand in the back of our field, running off an old tape. Sometimes we need to know about it, sometimes we don't. We can follow that bouncing ball as we go through there, and then really helping us bring us to that threshold point where it says, and now we're going to make a different choice. We're going to make a choice that more matches our philosophy, right? And lets us bring that into form, into action with our how we're breathing, acting, living, doing as a human being, right? And how we're interacting, and allow that to come in. So this way, each little place that we have a rupture and each little place that we willingly and respectfully step into repair, voila, that is how we build self-trust. That is how we build inner trust. This is how we start to believe in ourselves as a co-creative being in the universe versus one that has no ability or autonomy to have mastery or sovereignty over our own heart, our actions, and our ways of being. And so it really is in those moments of waver, that is where we can strengthen ourselves. Now, again, it's when we're having clean intentions. So if we just say, hey, here's my intention, whatever, I'm going to go do whatever I want and just keep telling my system, oh, I can fix it tomorrow. Oh, I can fix it tomorrow. That would probably be out of alignment, right? Because then you're not even matching your heart intention. So it does come with true willingness to say, hey, I'm as the best of my ability, I'm going to try to stay true to myself, right? And true to these intentions that we set. But perfection is not the name of the game. And so the idea is that we can, in these little moments, through the soulful practices that we do, when we catch ourselves out of alignment, we can bring ourselves back. So it's not a time to bash ourselves, judge ourselves, throw ourselves under a bus, and run over ourselves 20 million times. That would be the second part of the be kind that I was missing. And having that motto helped me remember to do that and to bring that back in, right? And then when I did that more for myself, I was able to offer that same grace and understanding to others and hold healthy boundaries. It's like all the pieces kind of come together and bring that one. Okay, so back to this week's practice, now that we did that little potential self-sabotatory tricky trap that's over there, is to really bring ourselves into this week's idea of not just talking about our philosophy, but embodying it. And so what I'd like to ask you to do is this kind of a two-step process this week, hopefully that's okay, is we're going to take a moment to really kind of say, what is a motto of mine that I either want to begin having, like mine connecting with joy and be kind? Those in the beginning were more idealistic. I was like, hey, this is what I want more of. I want to strengthen this within my life, externally and internally, right? So it could be something that you already have, that you're already doing, that you want to strengthen, or something that you want to start. So just take a moment and pause the video if you need to, and just jot down some ideas of what that motto might be. You can definitely pick one of mine, feel free. You could pick maybe one that was come out of the past soulful practices if you've been with us on others ones. Just really kind of take a moment, like what is it that you want to work with? I want to maybe be able to hear my heart, talking to me, to open to grace, right? What is it that's calling to you? And just kind of put them down. And then for the sake of this teaching, I'm going to keep on moving forward. But again, feel free to pause if you need to. And also for the sake of teaching, I'm just going to pick one to kind of walk through, and then you can customize it to match yours, however that works for you. So I'm going to pick the be kind because I think that's always something that I can, work on, especially towards myself. So I'm going to pick that one. And so the feeling that um, I want to explore now is what would that feel like? What would that look like if I embody it and I put that motto, be kind, into motion? So one of the things that just popped up is like this idea is that when I get triggered, because we all have those like moments where you just have that, oh, like that didn't feel good. I didn't appreciate that. That didn't land well with me. That in that moment, I can choose to pause and ask for grace to come in and help give me guidance, or I can step into like just rolling with that and down into harsh judgments, whateverness, and justifying my actions, showing up in a way that doesn't match who I truly am, that be kind. Right. And so in those moments, I want help to pause and say, Grace, suit me up, right? Help me hear my heart so I know what actions to come in. So I'm not doing extra harm in this situation. So then if I do that, I need to have a willingness to be mindful of my words and my actions, right? So I'm just not going to walk on autopilot, that my actions and my words actually have an impact on myself and on others. So honoring that my words and my actions are creative beings among themselves, and they have lives that happen as they ripple out. I can't control how somebody takes my actions or my words, but I can say I want to be mindful of them and selective so that they match the highest good and benefit of all, and trying to do no harm. That can be my prayer. So for example, before I start recording any of these videos, it's the same thing. That's one of my prayers. Like, please help me guide my words and my actions to be of benefit and support to others. Please help me to try to do no harm, and please help me to be guided into what would be the best support for others, because I know they ripple out, right? And infusing that with beautiful Reiki energy. So the other piece that I would have to do in this be kind idea, what it looks like to me, would a willingness to be self-responsible, right? That I am in charge for how I meet my own agenda, my wants, my needs, and not pushing that or trying to manipulate that on others, because that wouldn't be kind. So I have to honor that other beings of all types of beings, human beings and non-human beings, are sentient, and they have their own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. They have their own right to say yes, no, or maybe. And so therefore, when I'm exchanging things and I'm inviting people into connection with me, I need to try to have that as part of that package, that the person has the ability to say yes, no, and maybe to me without me putting a huge story on top of it, right? And then, of course, for me, remembering to be kind to myself as I am to other beings. So this applies to me too. So those are just a few examples that I would write down, and you can write down like, what would it look like for whatever your motto put, like if I was actually walking this out into my day, how would this look? How would I act? How would I show up? How would I feel internally? What would my internal posture be? What would I be open to? So mine obviously has a channel open to my wise one self and team, right? It has that channel available so I can hear that guidance, because otherwise I'm going to be running off of my mind and my ego, which is very, very linked to my survival and trauma adaptations and all those passengers on the bus. So the chance of me running off of the passenger on my bus is very, very high if I don't have that channel open to my heart and to my wise one self, right? So once you have your list of what it would look like to be in physical form, then we can now move into just asking it, what is one part, like just one of those that might be optimal for me to focus my intention on this week? And so just go ahead and take a moment if you have your little list. And so you're looking at them. Which one of those would be optimal to work with? Because again, we don't try to go for the whole shebang. First, we focus the power of the mustard seeds, where I bring my focus as in one is in the whole. We're leveraging the laws of the universe here. That if I bring my focus here to this one, it ripples out into everything, raising all of the other things, helping me throw stuff out that I don't need, get rid of those limiting beliefs, and bring in beautiful, new, empowering beliefs and choices into my system. And we're going to take that into our 4 being check-ins. So for me, I'm feeling drawn into which one? Let's give grace instead of judgment. That's the one I'm feeling really drawn to at this moment. And so I would be setting the intention that this week I would be asking for help to feel when I start to move into motion with a judgment or a story or a personal idea of this is why someone's doing what they're doing, and this is connected to this and this is this, and I'm often running down the wrong road faster, so to speak. I want to help myself pause, pull the reins back, bring myself to a halt, and say, okay, instead I want to offer grace to myself, grace to the other, so that way I can sense, see, hear, know that which would be optimal for me to move forward, one that is based in kindness. And again, that kindness might come in many, many, many different forms, but I have to pause in order to hear that. So it might be to say nothing. It might be to hold a healthy boundary. It might be to offer compassionate support. If all those different options can come in, but the only way I'm going to hear that is if I pause, pull myself back, rein myself back in, and say, whoop. Let's pause and let's pick grace first and then allow that kindness to come forward so that I can embody it in that moment, not just think about it. So if you're following along with me, then let's just take a moment and bring that into our different bodies. So let's start with our physical body. And again, insert yours if that's not in here. Starting with that physical body, just taking a moment, taking kind of 3 beautiful breaths, just each breath in, allowing yourself to start to kind of bring your awareness to your physical body. This idea that I'm going to be willing to, one, pause when I have a judgment and just check into it, give myself a little halt moment in my life and see if that's matching what my heart is coming from me, my volition, my philosophy, or not. And how do I feel about that in and around my body? What sensations might be present? Um, so like right now, my feet, when I kind of like flex and move, and I'm like, that's interesting. That's an interesting scenario. I'm not quite sure what that's about yet, but I'm not going to give it a huge story. I'm just kind of tracking. You might be feeling like a quickening, a little nervousness in the heart center, the high heart. Um, Maybe there's a willingness to kind of get antsy, like, oh, I want to move with this. What are you feeling in and around your body with that one that you picked? Now opening up to the mental being. So kind of take a nice deep breath in and out. And we're just asking that questions. What are the different thoughts, the different little protective parts of me that are present right now as I'm just exploring this idea of a willingness to pause and give grace before judgments and let that grace guide me into my choices? What's the questions, concerns, confusions? Yeah, but if we do this, then how's that exposing us? What's the fear? What's the overwhelm? Because remember, it's those fears of those limiting beliefs. Those are what get us to show up differently than how we want to. And so sometimes it's good just to write them down. And sometimes just even acknowledging that helps them soften. And now, if it feels good to you, you can open up to what's present in that heart. So, what emotions are coming forward around the intention that you would like to set this week? Just again, information that this is where we usually meet some of those wounded parts of us. And in those wounded parts, there are parts that say, hey, we tried this in the past. And for whatever reason, the beings that were in our world, it really didn't work out well. Right? And so we're going to let them know, yes, that is a true statement for them, but is that true now, right? So keep inviting our system back to the present moment because we can't argue with it from a past perspective. We can fill that out and help them see other threads that were there, but it's only in the present moment that we can make this new choice, right? And so then opening up to that channel, that beautiful connection of our heart to our soul being. What support or guidance do you feel coming forward for you right now? That maybe can help meet some of those sensations in the body, help you understand them, answer the concerns that are coming from the mental being, tend to the parts that you found in your heart. So, for example, right now with my feet, oh, sorry, I'm just moving the camera as I move the thing, is like I can feel them wanting to stretch and say, wow, that was the way we used to have to meet the world. But now that's not true. So we can soften and actually allow our feet to connect more, to ground, a willingness to ground myself more into my own system. Here we go. And what else would your soul maybe want to share with you right now that can help support you individually on embodying your philosophy, your values, your motto? Hmm. So if it feels good to you, I invite you to join me in this week of Soulful Practices of cultivating greater volition. That's inner trust. You're matching your will, empowering yourself to hear your will, see it, understand it, feel it. That sense of courage to act and with freedom that matches your true self. So that volition really brings in not only an inner trust and a knowing what our own values are, it also gives us the freedom and permission to act in alignment with that, with our true self. So I set the intention this week to notice when I'm allowing old habits and fears and outside judgments to have more authority over me than my heart and my soul's guidance. Please guide my attention this week to be aware of the moments when I do have protective fears that are trying to cut me off, create that separation from either embodying my personal values, motto, and intentions, where it's cutting me off from a willingness to course correct. So when I realize I'm out of alignment, maybe it's trying to shame me or blame me or think somehow I'm not worthy of giving forgiveness to myself and others, and then course correcting, making a new choice, right? Allowing myself to repair that rupture. And so then also when I do find myself stuck in shame and blame that is robbing me of that ability to make that repair, to tend to myself, I want to step back a moment and really invite myself into opening up to Reiki support for love, for self-compassion, for support, to help myself put down the shame and blame so that I can step into once again movement that embodies my true self once more, right? So help me pause, soften, and look inward in those moments, and to have awareness that illuminates the different parts of me that are lost in those moments, right? In those protective stories, in all of the wind that can sometimes happen, in the tidal wave that happens within our mind. So help me pause and soften in those moments so that I can illuminate what protective stories need to come down so that I can match my true will. And then help me flow my inner compassion, courage, and kindness to the different areas that need to be tended to, the wounded parts of me, so that I can release their protective spells, open to trusting myself, and access greater inner faith, that so I can believe in myself, in my ability to match, my willingness to match my actions with my true self, hence volition, right? So help me listen and match my guidance with my actions this week. So I'm committing to this practice this week and to see what comes up with it. I would love to hear how this practice is helping you. Feel free to share with me in the comments about what your personal motto is that you decide to work with this week of matching your volition to that, and how this practice really is helping you to establish the key, the foundational thing to every healing and growth goal that you can have, building more inner trust, building more self-respect and worthiness, and ultimately that willingness to embody your true self. Again, I'm looking forward to hearing how this pocket teacher works with you this week. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it, by this beautiful philosopher Epictetus. Oh my God, words and I. Oh, names. Anyways, not editing that out. All the joy in the world. I'm going to connect with the joy in that moment, and I'm going to be kind. I'm going to live my motto. And so I'm not just explaining my philosophy, I'm embodying it. Offering you light, love, and joy. This is Michelle Holling Brooks. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you again for joining me in this episode of Soulful Practices. I'm honored to be a guide for you on your spiritual and wellness journey. Your commitment to becoming soul-led within your life is a gift to both yourself and to every being. Together, as we become more aligned with our true self, we truly do create those ripples of light, of love, of joy that goes out to all beings and empowers us all. So please share what parts of this practice spoke to you. Share with us your ahas or how this practice is working with you throughout the week as you go throughout your daily life. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that you can stay up to date with the next soulful practice and pocket teacher that wants to help you create that courageous connection to your soul-led life. If you feel called to share this podcast with your friends and family or to write a review, please do so, because it will help increase that beautiful circle of soul-led companions throughout this world. Together, we can create a beautiful, soulful conversation, connections with others, and help each other on our journey. Like Ram Dass says, we are all just walking each other home. Again, this is your host, Michelle Holling-Brooks. Until we meet again in the next Soulful Practice episode, offering you a blessing of light, of love, of joy on your journey.